Our featured speaker today is a good friend. His name's Buddy Weaver. Started calling in 1977 while still in school in Honolulu, Hawaii. He's a third-generation square dance caller. He joined CALLERLAB in 1981 and has attended 19 CALLERLAB conventions. Buddy has called in Japan, Denmark, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Germany, and probably more that I don't have on here, along with 30 United States. He has also been featured at numerous caller seminars in the U.S. and overseas, along with annual presentations on CALLERLAB convention panels. He's active in square dance recordings since 1981. Buddy is the owner and producer of Blue Star and Hi-Hat and several other recording companies. So please welcome Buddy Weaver.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was brought in here and asked to speak to you about recruiting and retention. So I'm here to give you all of the tips. Everything is going to be everything you ever need to know about recruiting and retention. How does that sound so far? Yeah. All right, great. So I'm going to start by talking to you about love. Love. And I'm going to start talking to you about my true love. For example, I can talk to you about this young girl who I met when I was a young man. Her name was Deborah. Her name still is Deborah, by the way. When we first met, I could remember vividly her smile would light up the room. When I would see her, we met, by the way, at square dancing. When I would see her, the sunbeams would shine, birds would start to sing. When I started to hold her hand for the very first time, I got tingles touching her hand. It was a wonderful feeling to get from that. I remember as we started dating, she'd say things like, "Let's go shopping." I was an 18, 19-year-old guy, and we lived in Hawaii. And, you know, I love to go to the beach, hiking, anything like that. Shopping was way down on the list of things to do. However, she was my new love, and she'd say, "Let's go shopping." The answer was always, yes.
Here.
Not only that, but I couldn't wait to buy something for her. I'd love to buy things for her. I'd buy her jewelry often. She still has a lot of the same jewelry. And I say this because we're still together. We've been married now for this year, be 37 years we've been married. After 37 years of marriage, the love is different. Okay? So now when we talk about things like, let's go shopping, it's Costco. I still enjoy buying things for her. I don't go out and buy jewelry for her. Now it's more of the kind of thing that when we were newlyweds, and I would go out and I bought her a brand new red sports car. That's what she wanted. When our first daughter was born, I said, "That's too small, it's not safe, not enough room to get a car seat in the back," so I went out and bought her a brand new sedan. She loved it. Second daughter comes along, she's the Scoutmaster. I bought her a minivan. She loves it. Kids are now grown, out of the house, so now she drives around in her convertible. She loves it. I'm still enjoying buying things for her. I talked about how when we'd hold hands, the tingle was there. The tingle is different. Now, the touch of her hand is a reassuring feeling. It's a strengthening feeling. It's when I'm down, her touch can give me strength that I didn't know I had. And when I'm at the very edge, the touch of her hand can calm me down. It's a much different feeling from the touch of her hand. That smile that lit up the room still lights up the room, but now it echoes. Now it's duplicated by the same smiles that I see in our daughters' faces. They have their mom's smile. They have their mom's laughter. So that smile now is so much more than it ever was. The love that we felt in the beginning, I like to refer to as new love. It was the love of something that was coming. It was a love of something not quite known. And now that we've been together and that love has evolved, it is a love that I like to refer to as experienced love. It's the love of what is known. It's the love of someone who I have come to adore and cherish deeply, and who feels the same way about me after all these years. I'd like to talk to you about my love of square dancing, which we all can relate to this. I can tell you that as a new dancer, very similar to the love I feel for my wife, when we were new and newly in love, when I was a new square dancer, it was a new love. It was a love that experienced, I would say, as a beginner in classes, I would think back and remember this. This would have been 1973. But I remember the music. The music was exciting. It was fast. It was kicking. It was a lot of live instruments. Now, by comparison to today's music, you might say, oh, it's very old-fashioned. But to a young guy, it was really something. It was a great new feeling of being able to move. Because I was a young guy, we didn't dance. And this is back in the 70s, and you know, dancing while touching people was not necessarily the thing that a lot of teenagers did. And being a young man coming into square dancing, this was something new. You're touching hands. You're moving from one call to the next call. The caller, he was excellent. I can look back and I think Bill Mueller was the best caller ever put on God's green earth, because he had me moving from one call to the next. Now, I can listen to recordings and say, well, he wasn't the greatest caller. But to me, he'll always be the greatest caller. It was that feeling of looking out at the dancers and looking at the callers. Now, for example, I can remember reading about Chuck Jones, a very famous animator, who once said, as a beginner square dancer coming in, callers were godlike creatures. And that's how my caller was when I was a beginner dancer. He was godlike. The dancers, the angels, they were absolutely amazing. Not only could they move effortlessly through one call to the next, smiling, but they had an ease with which they wore their costuming. You know, the big skirts, or maybe it was the fancy shirts, whatever it was, they were so at ease with it. And everything flowed, and everything was amazing. They knew everybody. They walked in the square, they knew what would happen. It was an amazing and exhilarating feeling. That was what I call the new love of square dancing. Because I've been dancing now since 1973, and I've been calling a few years. And I can tell you that love is different. That love has changed. Those people that we saw as angels and just dancers who seemed at ease with everything, they're friends now. Now it's not just dancers. Now that's Joe and Mary. That's Frank and Jane. That's John and Joan. They're close personal friends in many cases. We travel together. We know them intimately. I can tell you about their kids. I can tell you about their grandkids. I can tell you what kind of health challenges they've got. And I can tell you how they've overcome the health challenges and become a victor or instead of a victim. I can tell you that we meet outside of square dancing. So square dancing may have been what introduced us, but they have a deeper friendship. They are individuals to us. I can tell you that as a beginner square dancer, we talked about the caller moved us from call to call, and I thought that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. Now, as an experienced square dancer, I look at a caller and say, wow, he can really move us from these different sequences. You know, he can put me way over here in this really odd thing, and just about the time we're ready to break down, boom, we're right back to home. I think, that's amazing. I can tell you that when I hear a new caller or a caller coming up and say, wow, listen to the music he's using. That's amazing stuff. That's stuff that comes from being an experienced dancer. And that is an experienced love that I feel, which is much different from the new love that I felt. Now, along with these experienced love, I like to say there are experienced love stories. And I'd like to share a story with you. This is when we've been dancing for a few years at a club level. By a show of hands, how many folks here our club square dancers dance with the club. That's just about everybody in the room dances with the club. So in the club that we were dancing, my grandparents were quite active in the club. And my grandmother, I love my grandmother. She was like my second mom. And we round danced together, we square danced together. She was not a baker, but she could bake one thing, and it was these German cookies. And in our square dance club, we had weekly dances, and every week 4 couples were called upon to provide refreshments. And when it was my grandmother's turn, part of that duty square, everybody in the club knew Jane was going to bring those German cookies. And I mean to tell you, as I stand here and even think about it now, and even though I thought about this many, many, many times, my mouth still waters right now. They were just phenomenal. And it was something that experienced club dancers, the people in our club knew. They knew that when she was on duty, that was going to be there. And my memory may be a little bit faulty, but I don't remember there ever being leftovers coming home from that dance. Everything went at the dance. You know what that is? That is a feeling of experienced love, and it was glue that bonded us all to it. It bonded me to it, even though that was my grandmother, and I love her dearly. I still would have gone square dancing, but it was that little bond right there. And it's that same bond that you would find in your own club, not only with maybe Jane's cookies, but maybe Martha's pies, or maybe Joe makes a great pot of chili. Whatever that is, there's a glue that's bonding you to it. That bond, friends, is retention. Experienced love in its simplest form, retention in its simplest form, is experienced love. It's what you keep coming back for every single week. It's not difficult to understand. In your own square dance clubs, you have your own Jane who makes her cookies. You have your own Joe who makes his chili. You have those little bonds that keep you coming back every single week. You've got that caller who is your icon. He is a guy who brings you back every single week. I'm here to tell you that in its simplest form, it's easy to understand. But along with understanding that retention is love of what is known, we also have to recognize that that changes. Because just like I was telling you about how when I met my wife and I bought her different cars, and our needs changed over the years, right? We had kids moved in, kids moved out, what have you. Changes occur in life. It's just no way you're gonna stop that. And in your own square dance clubs, change happens. You're gonna have callers who retire, callers who pass away. You're going to have that Jane who brings her famous German cookies to your club, and she's going to someday not be part of your club. We have to be okay with change. Change is evolution. See, I'm going to tell you something else too. That the way I felt about my wife when we were just dating, that's a feeling that I can never reproduce. Now, there may be times that I say, I would love to feel that way again, but there is a good reason we can't feel that way again. It has to evolve. If we try to feel that same way, we're trying to make something happen that can't. And that means we're turned off to change. And the same thing happens in our square dance clubs in retention. If we're turned off to the idea that something has to evolve, if we say that, no, we've always done it this way and we cannot change, we're turned off to evolution. If we say we cannot change, and I refuse to see a change, I would rather see it die than change, then we are turned off to evolution. And if we're turned off to it, then our love can't grow. And when change happens to us, when your caller dies, your caller retires, your hall is lost, your club, the foundations of your club, the same 3 couples who've been running your club for the last 20 years, when they die, when they quit, whatever happens, then everything crumbles because we've been turned off to change and to evolution. And as soon as we can see that, then we can see that change will happen. Change happens naturally. One of the problems we have, in my opinion, and if I preface it by saying it's in my opinion, then I've given myself clearance to say whatever I'd like to say, correct? In my opinion, one of our problems that we see in square dancing is, like I just mentioned, being turned off to evolution. And the second thing we see is sometimes is forcing change in an unnatural way. And we've seen this sometimes in the form of, let's say your club is dancing, oh, I don't know, let's say you've been dancing the same group of people for 15 years. You're all happy being there. Anybody here with me so far? You've got the same group of friends, you've got the same caller. You're happy coming out to dance, you know who's going to be there, you know what this caller is going to call, you probably know what singing call he's going to use at any given moment. You probably know what piece of music he's going to use. He's going to always close his dance with Grand Colonel Spin, whatever it is. Whatever it is. But suddenly somebody comes along and says, no, we need to bring the level up. You're not dancing good enough. Let's fire this guy. And let's bring in, instead of having old Joe Clark, we're going to bring in Joe Smith. And Joe Smith, he's going to bring our level up. And you kids are going to have to learn to dance better. You're going to have to learn to dance faster. And, well, Joe Smith, he's going to bring in some nice, hot, new pieces of music for you. Now, we just forced change into something. And when you force change, friends, that second point that I'm going to bring up about retention is when you start to lose your retention. It would be the same thing if my wife were to come to me and say, honey, I'm going to be substituting so-and-so for me for the next year. No. No, I don't want so-and-so. I'm happy with my wife. I'm happy with what is known. And in your square dance clubs, you have what is known, and people are happy with it. When evolution comes along, retirement, death, it's a gradual change, and we can adapt to that naturally. It's when we force that change is when we start to see resistance. And when you start taking away those binds that hold your members to the club is when you start to see the club fall apart. When you say there's nothing wrong with our existing caller, but we're going to let him go because we need to bring somebody new in. How many of you folks have seen this, where the new caller comes in and it doesn't make a difference who he is, how great he is, but the club membership declines. As soon as you tell people, we need to start dancing better, we're going to increase your level, you're telling people it's not that different, I would say, than walking into somebody's home and saying, nice home, could be better. You know, if you would have had different carpeting, different curtains, it'd look a lot better. And that's what we're doing to our old friends. The known love. We're taking that known love. We're happy with what we are. And now we're suddenly changing it. And we're going to tell you, no, we have to change it. And friends, that's when retention starts to go out the window. One thing, too, that we see when we try to force changes is that resistance to change. And it's a natural resistance to change because we don't want to see it. There are ways of softening it sometimes, and there are ways of just kind of forcing it onto people. But we have to bear in mind that if we want to retain members, now I want to take this same concept of retaining members at a club level and take it to a class level, because it's different. If you're trying to retain people at a class, what is known is quite a bit different, and it's on a much shorter scale. I want you to think about this for a second. How many of you folks, by show of hands, have been club dancing for at least 5 years? The majority of people. You know what it's like. How many, I would think you would probably agree that it hasn't much changed in 5 years in your club. Am I right? Pretty much been the same thing. You've seen a lot of the same people. You've seen the same caller. You know what to expect. In a class, our time together is much shorter. It could be as short as 8 months. It could be as long as a year in a beginner class. And when the people come in, which we'll talk about in a second, But when they come in, they start to experience it. Just like I talked earlier about when for my new love, and I came into square dance classes, and the caller was the godlike creature, and these dancers were awesome the way they moved around. The music was great. That was a very limited view of it. And what keeps your class members in the retention of the class members now is much different than what keeps people retained in club. For example, I talked to you about Jane's Cookies. Jane's Cookies means nothing to a beginner level. You say, our caller is amazing. He can put you into a tidal wave, into a parallelogram, and then move you right back to home instantly. It means nothing to a beginner. But they experience a whole new love of what they feel when they come in. To understand retention is to step away from yourself just for a bit. It's understanding what people have fallen in love with in your square dance class. To understand your love is to understand the retention in a square dance club level. If we can understand that as retention, the love of what is known, the new love, the love of what is to be, or what perhaps is better said as the love of what could be, that, friends, is recruiting. And recruiting and retention have very little to do with each other. Very little. Recruiting is taking that love of what could be and selling it to people. That is recruiting. If you come to your club every single week because you've got the caller who puts on, Grand Colonel Spin at the end of every single dance, and you put that on your advertising for join square dancing because you're going to dance the Grand Colonel Spin at every single dance, it means nothing. It means nothing to them, because you're not selling them on anything that could be. That means nothing. What people are wanting is the idea of selling a new love. I can tell you that not only is putting out there that, oh, our caller does the best version of Grand Colonel Spin, that is what I would say recruiting is not. Recruiting is not that. Recruiting is not telling people, hey, square dancers, we travel together. Hey, square dancers go off to weekends where we go off to strange places and dance. Hey, square dancers go to Kansas City, Missouri in the middle of the summer and dance at a big national convention. That means nothing to someone who knows nothing about it. Recruiting is selling the love of what could be. Recruiting is what's selling the love of what could be. What keeps, so let me back up for a second. No, hang on. If we're trying to sell the love of what could be, I'm going to go back to my true love analogy for a second. Let's just say in a hypothetical, you're out there and you're trying to find a new love in your life. I'm not talking about square dancing. I'm talking about a new partner. You're trying to find somebody new. How about you folks, you probably are familiar with some of these dating sites, correct? Online dating sites, Match.com or Swipe Left or Swipe Right. Now, it would be as if I were to go out there and say, you know what, I want to find a new love. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put down there the athletic build. Not. Love to go shopping. Not. What else can I say about myself? Good looking. No, that's gone. All these, it would be as if I'm trying to sell something that I'm not. But when I'm trying to sell something I'm not, guess what I'm going to find? Something I don't want. Because there's somebody out there also selling something that they're not. And if we're trying to recruit people to our square dance club, it's important to know what we have, what you are. If you're not 30 years old with a full head of hair, athletic, enjoys walks on the beach at night, and enjoys giving foot rubs, then you don't put that out there. And if we're not a club full of 20-something-year-olds who want to learn square dancing in a matter of 6 weeks, then don't put that out there, because you'll get something that you didn't know that you really don't want. You're going to get somebody who comes to you and says, wait a minute, you're not 30 years old. You don't have a full head of hair. You're not athletic build. You don't enjoy giving foot rubs. And it's the same thing when they come into your square dance club. Wait a minute. This is not a club full of 20-year-olds. And this is not going to take me 6 weeks to learn square dancing. It's going to take me a lot longer. And by the same token, if you understand what you are and what you are looking for, then it becomes easier to recruit. There are people out there right now looking for what you have to offer. Our problem is that we don't recognize that. We want something that we really didn't know we wanted. We think we want to have 20-something-year-old square dancing. I'm here to tell you that my children are in their 20s, and they're not going to spend 8 months learning how to square dance. It took them a semester to get enough college credits to move on. And they measure their time spent learning something by semesters, by what we have in undergrad and, in one of my daughter's cases, grad school. And so the concept then is saying, forget about semesters. I want you to just be here every single week for 10 months. That is asking an awful lot from a 20-something-year-old person. It really is. And I would like to add one more thing onto the whole concept of how much time we spend in classes. You know, there's a lot of studies that have been done on how much time it takes to learn to square dance. And we've said, okay, well, if you're going to learn mainstream, let's say mainstream is your entry level. How many folks have mainstream as your entry level? Okay? Mainstream should take you somewhere around 6 to 7 months. But that, friends, is a weekly class. What happens when one of your dancers misses a week? You've got to make up for that week. You can't skip a week. If they miss 2 weeks, you've got to make up for that. Now, that's great if you have 2 couples in your, well, let's narrow that down. Let's say you have 2 people in your square dance class. 2 people. One person misses 1 week, great. Next week, you're going to make it up. Well, that means it's going to take you a little bit longer than your 7 months, isn't it? If they miss 2 weeks, you have to make that up. It's going to push you back a little bit longer. But what happens when you have 2 squares in your beginner class and one person misses something and another person misses another week and another person misses another week? You have to keep pushing that class back. And guess what? How many of us do? None. 0. But we expect people to somehow keep up and learn. And when they don't keep up, they drop out. I wanted to kind of chase down that alley for just a second, because that is something to remember when we're talking about recruiting and retention. Because it's important to sell what we really are and not sell something that we wish we were. Now, going back to the positive side about trying to recruit and sell something that we are, or something that we could be. I can tell you there are a lot of successful groups out here. Right here in the Thousand Oaks area in California, you folks have a very successful square dance club. And our club at home, in my own area in San Diego, is a very successful club. We found, for us, that a lot of our members were recent empty nesters. A lot of our folks, their kids just recently moved off to college. And like my wife and I, we kind of looked at each other and said, okay, now what? It's been a long time since it's just been the 2 of us. And now we feel like we're just haunting the house. So we find something to do together. And we have been successful with that in our club. We found the second tier of people are the ones who are recent retirees. They're also coming out of being very busy to look for something new to do. And our club was already populated with recent retirees and recent empty nesters. So guess what? Our beginner program is full of recent retirees and recent empty nesters. We don't have any 20-something-year-olds. That's okay, because we don't have anything to offer those 20-something-year-olds. We've had 1 or 2 come through the program. They'll go through the class, and then they're off, they're gone. They're on to something new, as they well should be. The people who are empty nesters come back to us. The third group of people that we found in our own club, and we kind of stumbled on this, are the folks who still have kids at home, but sometimes, and in this day and age, we have to also be aware that it's different now for kids in school than it was when we had kids at school. And sometimes there are more challenges to the kids in school. And we found that we've had parents who have kids who have had challenges at school. And so square dancing becomes their escape, because they have nothing but stress at home. They may have aging parents at home. They may have an aging parent who is difficult. Can you imagine having a difficult parent? They may have that aging, difficult parent who doesn't want to be in that facility where they have to have help. They may at the same time have a teenager in school who's facing bullying issues, or may have other issues going on. Guess what? Their life is really, really stressful. And they come to square dancing, and I've had those people come to me and say, thank God for square dancing. You saved my Thursday nights. Thursday night, I wake up Thursday morning and I say, I am so looking forward to square dancing tonight. I get away from my problems. And they stay with us. Now they may have to leave us because maybe that aging parent has had a turn for the worse, and they may have to take care of that aging parent, or maybe their stress with the kids may become more so. But we know what we offer. And so when we go to recruit, we're not selling square dancing by the shoe scuffers club. Means nothing to the people out there. We know that what the people are looking for is an escape, and we know what they want is to be people like themselves. So what square dancing is, and what we sell in the way of recruiting, is what it could be. We're selling the idea of what square dancing could be for them, which is an escape, which is fun, it's enjoyment, it's music, it's dancing, it's something other than what they are currently experiencing in their own lives. That being said, recruiting is that new love. And your challenge is to find what is the new love in your own group. And you may have to sit there for a while and think about it. You may have to sit there and think about what was your feelings of square dancing when you first came in to square dancing. What was that new love for you? Please silence your cell phones. Hang on, we'll wait till you take the call. Okay. What brought you in? What was your feeling of new love? I can tell you what mine was, and I did tell you what mine was. And you may need to dig a little bit further. You may need to maybe start at the foundation. You may need to sit there and say, what about your own love in your own life? Your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. What was that feeling of new love like? What was that feeling of what could be? Then in square dancing, when you came in, what was that feeling of what could be? Of what was about to be? And remember that that is recruiting, and what you feel now is not recruiting, it's retention. You are all in the feeling of experienced love. Show of hands, how many of you folks have been with the same person in your life for more than 10 years? The majority of hands in this room. So what you feel for each other right now is that feeling of what is known. You know what that person is. You can't sell that. And it's the same thing in square dancing. You can't sell what you know. You have to sell what could be. You're going to come up with your own love stories, as it were, because at the end of the day, it's the love story that sells. It's the love story that comes out. Retention and recruiting is not a technical aspect. It is a heartfelt feeling. It's what you feel here. When you go back to your club every week, I want you to stop before you get dressed and think about it. Are you going back out of a sense of duty, or are you going out of a sense of love? Because you know what to expect when you walk in there. And if you can understand, you need to tap into that emotion. Now you're on the road to understanding retention and recruiting in its very simplest, fundamentalist form. Now I could stand here and talk to you another 30 minutes, but I believe in being brief. And having said that, I want you to go home and I want you to find your love story. I want you to find what makes you fall in love with square dancing, and then understand retention and recruiting. Fall in love. Tell your love story. Thank you, guys.
All right. Nice hand again for Buddy. We do have a few minutes if anyone has a general question you'd like to ask or comments. Take them. If not, don't see any hands going up. Remember the evaluation forms. We'd love to have you fill them out. Buddy doesn't get paid unless...
And you got it right. But
He
you didn't get paid.
doesn't get paid, that's right. But do leave the, if you're doing leadership certificates, see one of the staff on the way out. Judy's waving her hand back there. I've got two Judys back there waving hands. Yeah, we've got them all. Okay, and with that, we thank you for coming. We hope you enjoyed your speech. Buddy, thank you very much again. And on behalf of the 67th National Square Dance Convention Education Committee, we appreciate you all being here today. Thank you very much.